Truck driver sees elderly couple being held up by thieves on an isolated highway. Comment saying what you thought of this story, giving a score from 0 to 10, and comment from what city you are watching me. I really want to know if you liked my story and I want to get to know you better. So subscribe to my channel to support my work. I count on your help. There are nights when the road just vanishes. It disappears right out from under you and turns into something else, turns into a ghost, turns into nothing. It was exactly like that on that moonless Tuesday, 1 in the morning, when I stepped on the brakes of my Peterbilt and felt the rig slide on the wet asphalt of Highway 9. The fog had rolled down from the mountains and completely erased the world. Locals call this stretch the whiteout corridor, and I really should have just kept rolling. Any man with a lick of sense would have done exactly that. But I heard a sob. It was low, almost lost in the howling wind, and so I stopped. I climbed down from the cab with my heart beating completely out of rhythm. The air smelled of wet pine and cold earth. Visibility was absolutely zero. I took 3 steps and froze completely. An older woman with stark white hair was on her knees right there on the blacktop. Her hands were pinned behind her back. On the other side of her, an older man was pressed up against an old sedan, his face smashed against the hood. Standing right between them were 2 dark, shadowy figures. One voice was growling out orders. The other was just laughing quietly. I didn't even think about it. I just charged forward. I yelled out something, I don't even remember what. Those 2 figures immediately backed away into the thick fog as if it had simply swallowed them whole. The older woman fell over onto her side. Her husband turned his face toward me, completely wet with tears. I grabbed them both and hoisted them up into my cab. I locked the doors tight. I called the state troopers on the CB radio. My hands were shaking so terribly that I missed the right channel twice. When the cruiser finally showed up a good 40 minutes later, the deputies were young, too green. They told me that without catching them in the act, without any visible injuries, the report would just be an informational one. No manhunt, no arrests. The fog had swallowed absolutely everything, including the evidence. I looked over at the older woman huddled up in the passenger seat, her eyes fixed dead ahead on the windshield, and I understood right then. This was far from over. My name is Dave Adams. I am 43 years old and I have been driving rigs for 20 years now. I haul livestock feed between Denver and Salt Lake City. I am not a hero. I never have been. I am just a man who prefers the quiet of the open highways over the loud noise of the big cities. Folks say I am a bit too kind, that I listen way more than I speak, that I am the guy who pulls over to help a lost dog on the shoulder. Maybe so. But there is one thing that nobody sees. I carry a heavy longing that weighs me down like an extra load. My mother passed away 2 years ago. I drove down this exact same Highway 9 with her sitting right there in the passenger seat, heading back from a doctor's appointment. Just days later, she was gone. I have never been able to drive through here again without gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turn white. Martha was the exact same age my mother would have been today. That is the real reason I climbed out of my truck that early morning. It was not bravery. It was just a heavy burden. In the days that followed, I made a decision that changed absolutely everything. I stayed put. I found a cheap little motel in Cold Creek, a small district about 10 miles down the road. I started asking around. It was in a little roadside diner that I heard the name for the very first time. Greg. The cook looked away the second he said it. His voice dropped real low, almost like the word itself burned his tongue. Greg was charging informal protection money from the local business owners around the area. He did not do it with a gun in his hand. He did it with threats hanging heavy in the air, silent, permanent. I found out that Arthur, Martha's husband, had completely refused to pay him 3 weeks prior. That holdup on the highway was no random accident. It was a message. Humiliating an elderly couple on an isolated road sent a crystal-clear warning to everyone else. Absolutely no one was safe. I felt my stomach tie itself into knots. Martha barely spoke a single word. She would only answer with short syllables. She would thank me with her head bowed low. She always looked away. It was like trying to read a book with all its pages glued shut. She spent 10 days exactly like that, until one afternoon, While we were drinking coffee out on the motel porch, she let it slip. He had told them that if they breathed a word to anyone, he would come right back for them as soon as the fog rolled in again. She had seen his face. She could easily identify him, and he knew that full well. The second week was just an endless maze of closed doors. Not a single local attorney wanted to file a formal complaint without hard physical proof. The climate of fear was very real. It was quiet. It was woven right into that rural highway culture where the law always arrived too late and the threats always arrived too early. Even worse, Greg's partner in crime, a young guy named Vince, was the nephew of a county commissioner. Any official move immediately turned into a messy political complication. That was exactly when Tara showed up. She was a freelance journalist all the way from Denver. She had a flat tire, a camera tossed in the back seat, and a notepad shoved in her pocket. She was investigating a series of stories about violence on the state highways. She bumped into me in the hallway of the motel. She heard the beginning of the story. Her reporter's instinct immediately lit up. But I hesitated. I knew that exposing Martha to the public could easily turn her into an even bigger target. Then Tara told me something else. She had already crossed paths with the name Greg before. It was in another county, another incident, another victim who had backed down right when it was time to testify. She had the records. She had the history. She had exactly what I lacked: context. In the third week, everything completely blew up all at once. Greg showed back up, not in person, but through a handwritten note left right on the windshield of Arthur's car. Just 4 words written out by hand. I never even got to read it. Arthur tore the paper to shreds while shaking violently, his voice breaking as he begged me to just leave town. He said he just did not want any more trouble. Martha completely broke down. She cried until she literally could not catch her breath. It was the absolute lowest point. I sat there in the cab of my truck for a solid hour, my hands resting on the wheel, the engine completely dead, wondering if I even had the right to keep fighting for people who were begging me to stop. Then the final blow landed. Tara found out that Vince had given an informal statement claiming that I was actually the attacker that night. The whole story had been flipped upside down. I suddenly became the suspect in the official narrative of the district. I felt the ground drop out from under me. It was Sarah, the owner of the motel, a middle-aged woman with a razor-sharp memory and a sharp tongue reserved only for those who truly deserved it, who finally flipped the game back around. She had saved, without even realizing its true value, a recording from an outside security camera. It captured a small stretch of the highway. On the exact night of the incident, a car had driven past at the precise time. The license plate was perfectly visible. I used the whole situation to my advantage. Without confronting Greg directly, I strategically leaked through Tara that an anonymous witness was just about to hand over a license plate to the district attorney. That information was only partially true, but the effect was exactly what I needed. Greg tried to vanish completely before he could get boxed in. He sped out of the district on a rainy early morning. While trying to make his getaway, he made one fatal mistake. He reached out to Vince on his cell phone. That message was intercepted. The final showdown did not happen out on some dark highway. It happened right inside an interrogation room at the county sheriff's office in Springfield, 12 days after that foggy night. Martha, that quiet and terrified woman I had tried so patiently to protect, walked right through that door, sat down right in front of the sheriff, and started talking. Slowly at first, then with a solid firmness that completely filled the quiet of the room. I stood right outside, leaning up against the peeling concrete wall, just listening to the muffled sound of her voice coming right through the door. She revealed that she had secretly snapped a quick photo of Greg's face with her phone, even before I had ever showed up. She had been waiting for the exact right moment to use it. Her quiet resilience was never a weakness at all. It was pure strategy. Greg was tracked down just 2 days later in a neighboring county. Vince, the second he realized the tables had completely turned, gave up the rest of the information about the whole extortion ring in exchange for a formal plea deal. But the true cost of the whole ordeal only became clear in the very last scene. On an afternoon with just a little bit of shy sunlight, a rare thing up in those mountains where the bitter cold seemed to last forever, I pulled my rig over again on that exact same shoulder of Highway 9. I climbed out slowly. I walked right up to the edge of the blacktop. I stood there staring down at the exact stretch of asphalt where it had all gone down. I had made a promise to myself that I would only ever return to this spot when I could look at it differently. Not with heavy guilt, not with crippling grief. Arthur and Martha had left some flowers right there on the shoulder before I even arrived. They did not warn me. They did not plan it with me. Just simple grocery store flowers tied to a branch with a rubber band. There was a little note written in Martha's shaky handwriting saying it was for the mother who had sent me to them. I read it 3 times over. I folded the paper up real careful. I tucked it right into my shirt pocket. I did not say a single word, because there was absolutely nothing left to say. There was only what I had to feel, and I felt it all hit me at once. The pain, the deep gratitude, the overwhelming relief, that gaping absence that never really goes away, but for that one brief moment it finally seemed to make some kind of sense. Over the next few months I went back to the Cold Creek district 3 more times, not because I had to, but because I chose to. I would bring them fresh fruit. I would sit and talk with Arthur about baseball and the weather. I would drink coffee out on the porch looking out at the mountains. Martha started talking a lot more. Not a whole lot. She was never going to be the loud and bubbly type, but just enough so that I knew she was doing okay. Just enough so that she knew I was doing okay too. The whole Cold Creek community, pushed into action partly by Tara's investigative reporting and partly by Martha's quiet, steady courage, actually planted a little roadside garden right on that exact stretch of Highway 9 where everything had happened. Just a simple wooden sign. Flowers planted by the locals. A little solar light that popped on every single night at 7 o'clock sharp. The whiteout corridor had officially become the flower corridor. The last time I drove my rig through there, I did not grip the steering wheel tight at all. I just rolled my window right down. I felt that crisp mountain air rush into the cab. I looked out at that little illuminated garden right on the edge of the road. The flowers were swaying gently in the breeze. The fog was just starting to roll down from the mountain peaks, but it just did not carry that same heavy weight anymore. It did not erase the whole world anymore. It let the lights shine through. It let the flowers breathe. I thought about Martha. I thought about Arthur. I thought about Tara. I thought about Sarah. I thought about my mother. I thought about all the people who just wander into our lives without any warning, and in some strange way completely change who we are without us even noticing. The open road has always been my safe haven, my way of escaping, my way of avoiding the empty spaces. But on that dark, foggy night, it turned into something completely different. It became a bridge. It became a meeting place. It became the rock-solid proof that no good deed ever gets lost in the whiteout. It stays. It leaves a mark. It changes things forever. I kept on driving. The big diesel engine just hummed along quietly. The radio was playing an old song that my mother always used to love. I did not turn it off. I let it play all the way to the very end. And right when the highway straightened back out, stretching long and empty just like it always had, I finally realized that something deep down inside of me had fundamentally shifted. It was not pure happiness. It was not total peace. It was something much simpler and much deeper. It was the solid feeling that I had done the right thing, that I had been exactly where I was meant to be, that the thick fog, that quiet sob, that completely unexpected encounter, none of it had been an accident at all. It had all been purpose. And purpose, as I found out on that freezing cold highway out in Colorado, is the one single thing that the fog can never, ever erase. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every single day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story, giving it a score from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.